Monster Mom, episode number 3. My mother-in-law stole my chemotherapy. As if I didn't already have enough problems, my mother-in-law somehow managed to create another one. I'm fighting cancer for the second time in my life. The first time, I was only 14 years old. I went through treatment. I beat it. For years, life was normal. Then, during a routine medical exam for work, everything changed. I'm 30 years old, and I have cancer again. This time, it's a completely different cancer, affecting a different organ. Fortunately, it's still stage 2. But my oncologist warned me that the tumor is aggressive. It grows quickly. It spreads quickly. We needed to start treatment immediately. Hearing that news felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Cancer is exhausting, not just physically, but emotionally too. Anyone who's gone through it knows exactly what I mean. After surgery, my doctor prescribed oral chemotherapy. Instead of spending hours in a hospital every day, I take pills at home and visit the clinic every few weeks for blood work and scans. Right now, I'm on medical leave. I have almost no energy. I've lost a lot of weight. Before getting sick, my wife and I shared all the household chores. Now there are days when I can barely get out of bed. I still try to help whenever I can, but every time I apologize, my wife smiles and says, "You only have one job right now, not to die." A few days ago, my mother-in-law came over to visit. She knows about my diagnosis. I was lying on the couch reading, while my wife was doing a few things around the house. My mother-in-law looked at me and said, "Look at him, lying around like he's on vacation. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Your poor wife is working while you're doing nothing." I calmly answered, "I just took my chemotherapy. I have a terrible headache, I'm nauseous, and I don't feel well." She rolled her eyes. "You're a young man. You can't handle one little disease? Those chemicals are poisoning you. You should be using natural remedies." Later that day, I overheard her talking to my wife in the kitchen. She was saying, "Don't let him take those pills. They're what's making him sick. Doctors don't know anything. He needs herbs." My wife shut the conversation down immediately. She told her mother to stop giving medical advice when she had absolutely no medical training. The next morning, it was time for my next dose. I opened the bathroom cabinet. It was empty. Every bottle of my chemotherapy medication was gone. I asked my wife if she'd moved them. She hadn't. We searched the entire house. Nothing. Then my wife remembered something. Before leaving the previous day, her mother had asked to use the bathroom, considering everything she'd said about my medication. There was only one explanation. My wife was furious. She got into the car and drove straight to her mother's house. About 30 minutes later, she came back. My mother-in-law admitted she'd taken the medication. She'd thrown every bottle into the trash. She honestly believed she had saved my life. She told my wife, "Those pills are killing him. The cancer isn't. I did him a favor. You should have bought him herbal tea instead." Because of what she did, I missed an important chemotherapy dose. I had to contact my oncologist immediately. When I asked for another prescription, he looked confused. "I just prescribed your medication. Have you already used it all?" I took a deep breath and said, "Doctor, my mother-in-law stole my chemotherapy." For a few seconds, he simply stared at me. Then he quietly wrote a new prescription and adjusted my treatment schedule. Since that day, every bottle of my medication stays locked inside a cabinet. And my wife made one thing perfectly clear. Her mother will never be allowed inside our home again. My mother-in-law walked into my house, and the first thing she saw was a stripper pole. My mother-in-law was coming over at 2 o'clock, and there was one small problem. I had a stripper pole standing right in the middle of my living room. I was at work. My boyfriend was home. A little before 2, his mom texted him to say that she and his dad were stopping by to bring us lunch. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was my boyfriend. "Honey, the stripper pole." I started laughing so hard I could barely breathe. All I could picture was the look on their faces when they walked through the front door. For some context, my boyfriend's parents are extremely religious. Not just religious, the kind of people who think everyone else should live exactly the way they do. I have nothing against religion, but I really don't enjoy people using it to judge everyone around them. So I texted back, "It's our house. They'll get used to it." A while later, I finished work and headed home. On the way, I texted my boyfriend to ask how things were going. No reply. He hadn't even read my message. That only made me more curious. When I finally got home, I opened the front door. The first thing I heard was my mother-in-law yelling, "Tell me right now that he's lying." I froze. "What?" She pointed at the pole. "He told us he wants to become a stripper." I looked at my boyfriend. His face was bright red. He was trying so hard not to laugh that he could barely breathe. I stood there for a second before finally saying, He's lying. I'm just going to change my clothes." Then I escaped into the bedroom before I embarrassed myself even more. From the hallway, I could still hear them arguing about the pole, and I could hear my boyfriend laughing. A few minutes later, I walked back into the living room. My in-laws were still staring at the pole. My mother-in-law spoke first. "If you're having financial problems, we can help. You don't have to do this. It's disgusting, and our son shouldn't allow it." I took a deep breath. "I'm not a stripper. We're doing just fine. It's for fitness. My father-in-law shook his head. Then go jogging. People don't need one of those to exercise. My boyfriend smiled. Have either of you ever watched a professional pole dancing competition? It's not stripping. It's actually incredibly athletic. He pulled out his phone and opened a few videos. The room became completely silent. After a minute, my father-in-law quietly said, "Wow." Then he looked at me. "Can you do that too?" I nodded. They wanted a demonstration, so I showed them a few beginner tricks. To my surprise, they were fascinated. My mother-in-law actually squealed with excitement. Then my father-in-law smiled and said, "I bet I can do that." To everyone's surprise, he actually managed one of the easier moves. My mother-in-law looked at him like she'd just fallen in love all over again. We couldn't stop laughing. Then my boyfriend challenged me to see who could do the cooler trick. After that, he brought out the VR headset. Before long, all four of us were taking turns playing horror games and laughing together. By the end of the evening, my in-laws thanked us for inviting them. They said they'd had a wonderful time. Honestly, none of us expected the day to end like that. I'm still being careful. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But for the first time in a very long time, it felt like they had stopped judging us and simply enjoyed spending time together. I'm hoping things continue in this direction. Only time will tell. My mother-in-law threw away all my food. For various reasons, my mother-in-law had to move in with my husband and me for a while. I'm South Asian, and my husband is a white American. I grew up eating Indian food, and I still absolutely love it. During the lockdown, I finally had enough time to cook at home. So I stocked up on rice, spices, flour, and everything I needed to make my favorite meals. My husband has no problem with it. In fact, he loves my cooking. My mother-in-law, however, she can't stand my food. Or me. Every now and then she'd say things like, "Who even eats with their hands? Use a knife and fork like normal people." At first, my husband always defended me. But after living together 24 hours a day, his patience was wearing thin. As soon as she moved in, the complaints started. "What is that smell? The whole apartment is going to stink." Or, "Are you really going to feed my son that? Make him some real American food." I knew the lockdown was stressful for everyone, so I tried to stay calm. My husband talked to her several times. Nothing changed. Then yesterday morning, I came downstairs, talked with both of them for a few minutes, and opened the pantry. It was empty. Every bag of rice was gone. Every spice, every bag of flour. Everything. Even my automatic rice dispenser had disappeared. I opened the refrigerator. There was almost nothing inside. Just milk, bread, butter, jam, and eggs. I looked at my husband. What happened to all the food? He looked just as confused as I was. Then my mother-in-law calmly said, "I threw it all away." I stared at her. "Why?" She shrugged. "My son isn't used to eating your food. Just cook him some normal American food." I was furious. She refuses to accept that I'm just as American as she is. Whenever someone asks about my background, she tells them I only became an American citizen after marrying her son. That's completely false. I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. In fact, 4 generations of my family were born in this country. I drove to the grocery store hoping I could replace everything, but because of the pandemic, most of the shelves were completely empty. When I finally got home, she actually asked me why I wasn't cooking dinner. I couldn't believe it. Update. My husband told her that what she did was completely unacceptable. For now, we're not kicking her out, but we're seriously thinking about asking his sister if she'll take their mother instead. My mother-in-law doesn't want to move because she'd be farther away from her friends. At this point, I honestly don't care. Besides, we're in the middle of a pandemic. She shouldn't be visiting her friends anyway. The Christmas decoration trap. Every time my stepmother saw something I wanted to buy, she'd rush out and buy it first, just so she could brag that she got it before me. So this Christmas, I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. A little backstory first. My husband and I have a planning board hanging on the wall. It lists everything we want to buy, the price, how much we've already saved, and when we hope to get it. Everything goes on that board. A new refrigerator, a dishwasher, a quality knife set, even little wish list items. I print out pictures, write down the exact models, and include all the details. I'm honestly really proud of it. My dad and his wife come over pretty often, and every single time, my stepmother carefully studies the board. She comments on everything. She always points out how unfortunate it is that we can't afford those things yet. Then, about a week or two later, she goes out and buys something from my list. Sometimes it's something small, like a coffee maker. Other times it's something expensive, like a ride-on electric toy car for her kids. I don't actually care that she buys the same things. What drives me crazy is that she always rubs it in my face afterward. She'll say things like, "I got it before you did," or, "Looks like you're copying me again." It's unbelievably childish. Right after Thanksgiving, I was browsing the Christmas decorations section at a local store, looking for ideas to add to my board. That's when I saw it. The biggest, ugliest, most outrageously expensive outdoor Christmas decoration set I had ever seen. And suddenly, I had an idea. The decorations weren't even her style, but I figured, why not test my theory? When I got home, I added the decoration set to the high priority section of my planning board. I even erased the savings we'd put toward other purchases and moved all of it to this ridiculous decoration set. I made it look like buying those decorations had become my absolute top priority. I acted like owning them would make all my Christmas dreams come true. A couple of days later, my dad and stepmother came over, just as I expected. She immediately noticed the board. She asked about the decorations, and I gave the performance of a lifetime. I talked about how beautiful they were, how magical they looked, how they would make this the perfect Christmas. I love Christmas anyway, so selling the act wasn't difficult. Then came Monday. She invited us over to their house. The moment we pulled into the driveway, I almost lost it. There they were, the entire decoration set, completely assembled, displayed across her front yard. It looked absolutely terrible, like a discount holiday carnival exploded on her lawn. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Of course, she immediately started showing them off. She explained how she'd fallen in love with them the moment she saw them, how they were worth every single penny. She went on and on, proudly describing every little detail. Finally, she smiled and said, "You really do have great taste in decorations. Too bad I beat you to them." That was my cue. I smiled back and said, "Oh, I don't even like that decoration set. I only put it on the board because I wanted to prank my husband. He absolutely hates that kind of over-the-top, tasteless stuff. But I'm glad you like it." Her smile disappeared instantly. For the rest of the visit, she barely said a single word. She looked like a little kid who opened a Christmas stocking, only to find a lump of coal inside. My dad kept asking if something was wrong. She just kept saying, "I'm fine." Eventually, she claimed she had a headache and went to bed early. Since then, she hasn't texted me. She hasn't called me. Honestly, best Christmas ever. Update. The morning after Christmas, I noticed she'd already listed the entire decoration set for sale in a local social media group. So yes, it officially became the best Christmas I've ever had.